All right. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I am so excited to be here for this week's episode of Summer Fundraising with you all. And it's great we have so many people tuned in. Welcome to all of you who are here with us on Crowdcast. And I know there's many of you tuning in over on Facebook Live as well. So hello and welcome to all of you. If you're over on Facebook and you want to join our conversation, ask questions, it's easier to be over in the Crowdcast platform with us. You can go to crowdcast.io/Vanessa E. Chase, and you'll find a listing for this event there. And you can log right in and join us. I'm really excited. We have such an awesome guest this week, Kishana Palmer, who's a friend and colleague of mine. We're going to talk about how to be a better manager at your nonprofit, which is, I feel like, a conversation I wish I had when I first started managing people years ago. I was thinking about my first experience managing, which was actually my first fundraising job. I somehow got put in charge of the student call center at the university I was working at, in addition to like all the other things I was doing, and I had to manage like 32 students who were part-time employees for us. It was ridiculous.
I don't even know what that is. I have no idea what that is.
And I just remembered being like so overwhelmed by having to like be in charge of all these people. So I'm really excited we get to talk today and chat a little bit more about management and how to be a better manager, because I think it's a conversation we probably don't have enough in our sector. So
absolutely.
I want to introduce you, though, Kishana, and give people a chance to know who you are before we dive into our conversation. So my name is Vanessa Chase Lakshan. I'm the president of the Storytelling Nonprofit, which is probably how a lot of you people found this event today. And I'm here with our guest, Kishana Palmer, who's a sought-after strategist, speaker, and trainer and coach who combines book smarts with real-world experience and pop culture savvy to create unforgettable cocktails she calls fabulously fundraising. Kishana has worked for social impact organizations where she's designed development infrastructures, created and diversified fundraising programs, managed high-performing teams, and oh yes, definitely raised money. To date, she's helped organizations raise over $45 million. Kishana is committed to helping nonprofit leaders come up with bright ideas to propel their organization. And she's currently a certified fundraising executive, a board source governance trainer, and an AFP master trainer. With so many certifications, Kishana.
Oh my gosh, I'm like, I got bars. That's like, I'm a rapper with all these bars, all these certifications.
I know. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. How are you today? Hi, everybody.
I know. Hi to everyone. I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here with you. So let's dive right into it. I know we have a couple of questions to kind of guide our discussion. And then, of course, we want to answer questions from all of you. So if you think of questions you'd like us to answer, feel free to submit those using the questions button, or you can also send them in using the chat box. And I wanted to start, Kishana, with just, what are some common challenges you see people face in managerial roles, whether it's their, first time being a manager, or maybe they've been a manager for a while of, a fundraising team or another team within a nonprofit?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that I could probably list a laundry list, you guys, but I won't. For simplicity's sake, I think it falls into a couple of pretty clear buckets for me, at least. One is like making the transition from being an individual contributor to an individual contributor and a manager. And so if you think about like your hairstylist, your barber, your favorite restaurant, whatever, where the person who's running the business was like an amazing professional, and then they had to also make the transition to being an operator. I think of managing in that same way, where you could be like a kick-ass professional doing whatever, then you have to take on this extra layer of managing people. That in of itself has been like sort of, sticky wicket number one. I think the second thing is making the leap from being amongst your peers to managing your peers. And, for many of us if you are a high performer as a fundraiser or a communications specialist or an operations architect, whatever part of the social good space that you're in, once you make that leap out of your group, what happens when you then have to start managing folks who you were just having cocktails with at 5 the week before? That's
a great point.
Yeah. And then I think the third one is, what happens when you're not like really a people person? Like, people, they try to say like, we're supposed to be like, all extroverts who like love people and are really great at galvanizing the folks and herding cats and so forth. Any analogy, you guys, pick anyone. But truthfully, not all of us are actually really great at that. And so then you end up being a situation where you sort of, cobble it together and fumble through managing people to and through their goals. And you don't really have a good sense of what it takes in terms of your emotional intelligence, in terms of the soft, intangible skills, in order to get folks to rally behind you and to do their work and then some. So I think that those are sort of like my three sticky areas that I think that folks really struggle with.
I'm really curious for folks who are listening in what ones they might identify with. So if you're tuning in, maybe you can let us know in the chat box, if one of those resonated with you, or if maybe there's another that you find is your sticky wicket in management. I think for me, it's probably a combination of the third one that you mentioned, Kashana. I'm definitely more of an introvert. And I found when I've managed teams, having to be an extrovert to some extent, and managing people and like the energy that goes into the relationships that you have with people was always really challenging for me.
Totally. And most people who meet me think I'm a total extrovert, and I'm not. Listen, y'all, don't let this bright smile fool you, okay? I want to be home in my bed all the time. But, to your point, in being a manager, you've really got to sort of step outside yourself, and you really pour a lot into your team. And so the challenge there is, how do you find the balance where you're able to, if you think of a well, to fill your personal well with water, but also have enough ladle to be able to kind of give it out. And so I think that to me is the sort of part of the management dance, if you will, that we don't really talk about. It's not really theoretical. It's really just in being able to have a very high degree of self-awareness so that you are able to understand, like, what is your upper limit? And then how do you keep it so that you stay enough below it so that if you got to max it out a few times, rev that engine in the car, but you're not burning out the clutch. You know what I mean? And so I think that like you, like that for me was something that I really, really struggled with when I first started managing. And also like you, my first job, I was managing people and I was like, what is this? Yeah,
I remember having the same experience. I was doing a lot of work in annual giving at the time, and that was just like one piece of a lot of things that I was responsible for. And I just remember being like, how did I end up in charge of all these people? And I remember that whole like kind of first year that I was there, I kept having this thought that I was like, I really need some training. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I remember like once I got some help though, like once I like took some training and started like making a concerted effort to think about myself as a manager and like what that looked like for me, it was so helpful and so clarifying because I felt like I just had just more direction around like that piece of my role, and it wasn't, no longer like such a mystery to me. But
totally. And I think that happens if we're lucky. Like everybody doesn't actually get that. So more times than not, when I work with clients, I'm coaching some senior leaders or whatever around like managing, they have really tripped all over their shoelaces by the time they get to me. I'm lucky if I get somebody at the beginning who's like, Kashana, I just really want to be excellent. And if you could just help me, like that is like nirvana. Hello, can somebody help me? No. But by the time folks get to me, typically they have messed up a team or two, and or something in the middle. There's an intervention happening, and so it is what it is. But the thing that I think organizations aren't as intentional with making sure that leaders are prepared to actually manage. And so, there's sort of like, building the plane as you fly it in terms of learning how to manage. A little bit of that is happening. And then the inundation of articles and blogs and business books and on how you should manage. And it's hard sometimes to put that into context in your organizational ethos and culture for how that stuff really shows up. And I think that part to me feels like the challenge in really trying to put management theory really into day-to-day practice.
I get that. And I feel like that often happens with a lot of like conceptual frameworks and things, whether it's with management or, board governance or other things where it's like, how it should work, or, there's things that, are guiding principles or whatever, but it's difficult to figure out, what actually applies to you. Right. What do you want to take from that? And like, how does that look in practice within your specific organization? It's a lot to synthesize.
It is. I'm exhausted already. Okay. I need a VA.
I know. So I'm really curious. I know you have a lot of experience managing teams, and I'd love to know, what was one of your biggest learning moments as a manager in your career, and what do you think you took away from it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I learned was that, I am not perfect. Oh my gosh, that was it. That's it. Forget it. I'm not perfect. I am an overachiever. I am a perfectionist. I really struggle with like hitting a high bar because that's what I want for myself. And so I just could not understand why everybody couldn't hit the bar. I just could not wrap my mind around this. And so I had to understand really early on. And so my biggest aha in the beginning was, as much as we try to separate our personal lives from our professional lives, you bring yourself to work every day. Therefore, you bring your personal life to work every day. And so my biggest—
That's such a great point.
Yeah. And so my biggest breakthrough as a manager in the beginning was to pay closer attention to what was happening in my team's personal lives. Now, mind y'all, I am nosy, but I don't mean be nosy. I mean, so it's not the private stuff. You don't need to get all in the bits. But what is happening generally in their personal lives that could affect things that are happening at work, that could be episodic, that could just be temporary for the month, for the quarter, that might actually give you some indication to some performance challenges or opportunities to help your team stretch. And so I took it upon myself to really get to know my teams and to do it early and to keep reinforcing that actually I was invested in their professional success, whether it was me or it was with another organization. And once I did that, like once I released this notion that you have to be loyal to the organization and me forever, you got to toe the line. Once I released all of that and I said, look, you guys, I am here for you. I'm riding for you. I want to make sure that you are successful. My bar is high. And so because I know it's high and because I'm here for you, let's figure out how I can continue to support you so that you know that regardless, Kashana has my back, but that you understand that you have got to be able to take hold of your career. And I've been known to say that you steward your career like you steward an honor.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest—
That's such a great way of thinking about that.
Like this, that was it for me in the beginning. Like, you bring your personal life to work every day. So if I'm not getting to know you, how do I know what things are influencing the way you think, behave, operate? It made sense to me to be able to start to dig in that way. More not that
absolutely. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I think my own philosophy about like my work and the work that I do with others too is that like people show up as their whole selves, and there's no reason like not to know that and to honor that in the work that you do. And, to kind of divide those and to have like your personal life and your work life or whatever, I feel like you're right. It only does a disservice to everyone because they don't have the full story about what's going on with you. And B, they don't really get to know you in a way that's like truly meaningful sometimes, right? They don't get to know like all the wonderful things about you that happen outside of the office.
Totally.
All of those things. Yeah.
There's like vulnerability there. So, for some folks, I'm sure there's some raised eyebrows, with our folks who are watching, like, okay, Shauna, I want me to tell people my personal business. Yes and no. Okay. You gotta do a little toe dip, a little vulnerability, never hurt anybody. But it goes to building a trusting team, into creating a culture of trust in an organization, which I think is very important if you're going to manage well and if you're going to have a healthy team with which to manage.
Yeah. And I think so many times with organizations I've worked with over the years, one of the key problems I often see in sort of interdepartmental projects is often like the lack of trust between people, which just creates this like really toxic culture where no one really trusts anyone else. And there's a lot of uncertainty and people are acting out because of it. And it's really hard to get your work done to be able to do the good work that you want to do in the world that brought you to that organization when you're not trusting people and feeling like you're really on a team that you can rely on, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one more question before we take some audience questions. And for those of you who are tuning in, if you have questions for Kashana, feel free to send them in using the questions box or in the chat box, and we'll definitely get to those here in a few minutes. But Kashana, I wanted to ask you one last question. What are your sort of top, let's say 3 tips for nonprofit managers out there who are listening in today?
Yeah, I would say make professional development a requirement for yourself and for your team. if you talk to anybody who's ever worked on any of my teams and worked alongside me, they know that that is a part of their work plan goals every year. I play no games when it comes to that. Why? Because I believe so deeply that lots of us get thrust into these management roles because we are high performers. I want my team to be prepared, and I need to be prepared to constantly be shifting and changing and responding, not reacting to how culture is changing, to how the workplace is changing. And so make professional development not necessarily numero uno, depends on what your team is, because some of y'all cash is king if you're a fundraiser. For some of y'all, get the story out is your thing, depending on where you are in your organization. But that PD, professional development, is critical to your success as a manager and to your team's success. So I think that's one thing. I think the next thing is schedule ways to make it personal. And for me, that is whether you have scheduled times that you do your one-on-ones, that you hold your check-in sacrosanct. You're not like on the computer looking down, tell me about, okay, more and more. Like you actually are present and you're there. And you step it up and you take that to your team and you find time to get off site. I don't care if you guys go to the park that's 2 blocks down from your office because you can't afford to do a fancy schmancy camp offsite. You can find time to take your team out of that space to really dig into who they are, to continue to build that emotional intelligence and that muscle that you need for trust. Because when the work is hard, that is what you're going to draw from as a manager in order to get people to step up if some folks won't, and to step in where you want to be able to give some folks some stretch. And the third thing is to make space for yourself. I don't care what
I love that.
Other management practices tell you, blah, 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 learn this, do that, set rules, guidelines, all true, fine. And I have rubrics that I love and things that I follow. But ultimately, when you're on my team, if I know that you love yoga and we're 3 weeks into doing something, we're an annual end of year appeal, or we're going into gala, whatever, and I see that you haven't left your desk to go do, you looking stressed, I ask, excuse me, when was the last time you went to a yoga class? Oh, Kashana, you know, I haven't been there. And get out, go to the next class right now. So I make sure that my team makes time for them and that you make time for yourself, whether that's your personal time off, using your vacation days, sticking to your or your health routine, whatever it is that really fortifies you as a manager, you've got to create that space for yourself. And so, and we can dig into more of that if folks want to know like what specific things that I would do. And this is all tailored to my personality and my work style. And so you have got to do the things that really lift you as a manager to be able to make some space for self-care. Those are my three.
I love that. Those are all so amazing. Just out of curiosity, what are you doing for professional development these days?
So I'm digging in, becoming Gallup certified. You know, I love my certifications. Y'all, I'm a nerd. I like my things, my degrees, my certifications, my acronyms. And so I'm looking into Strength Finder 2.0 is actually one of the management team-based tools that I really love and have used as a full-time practitioner to really advance my teams. And so I've been digging into what it's going to mean to become fully certified. So that's one thing. And then I am determined to learn some software. And so have been kicking around editing software and video software because for me, I just want to be able to, you know, really strengthen my creative chops. And then lastly, I've been reading trashy stuff, you guys, because one of the things I do is I use pop culture to teach fundraising and nonprofit management topics. And you can't do it if you're not reading Us Weekly, okay? Or In Touch, or TMZ. You can't. You just can't. You got to know the thing. So that's what I've been doing recently.
I love that.
It's hard, like, right? When you're an entrepreneur on your own, I'm a solo practitioner consultant. And so, you know, this is my home office. Hey, y'all, you're here. And so I'm by myself. You're the same, right? I'm there by myself all the time. So you got to figure out ways to keep it interesting and keep it fresh because your clients and your organizations really rely on you to do so. So that's what I do. What about you?
What about me? I feel like this has been a summer of like catching up on a lot of reading, both of like current affairs, because my consulting partner, my husband, and I do a lot of work in political advocacy in the US. So knowing like the context in which we're working is always really important. But I feel like also just having interests outside of work has always been important to me, because people ask me like how I'm doing or what I'm up to. And like, I feel like it's important to have useful things to talk about, like projects I'm working on or hobbies I have, whatever. The other sort of interesting thing I've been working on that's not like quite as related to my work this summer has been getting better at financial management. I've been learning a lot about cash flow projections, all kinds of stuff like that, you guys. So, that is what I've been doing this summer.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyways, lots of fun. I want to go to some questions because we've had a ton that have come in since you and I started talking. And I'm just going to go ahead and we'll start answering the first one here. Elizabeth wants to know, do you have any recommendations for books, classes, etc., for professional development for high performers who get promoted?
Yes. And so one of the books, and it's funny, I have it on my desk. I really am a nerd, you guys. I have a whole shelf of books. So I have some go-to books here that I pulled out for today. So as you heard, no one pays me for this, okay? Not yet. You hear that, Gallup? Okay. So Strength Finders 2.0 and Strength Finders for Leadership. These are two go-to books. Strength Finders like this big, you guys. But this one, they're like two books that talk about how to really leverage your strengths and how to manage your weaknesses. What I love about this concept is that it really forces you to understand your people, particularly if you're a new manager, even if you're a vet. Like, it's not always just about the work. It's about the people that are inspiring and implementing the work. And so it really causes you to know your folks so that you know how to share work responsibilities when somebody is not awesome at something, but the task or responsibilities have to be done. So that's one. Okay. And then another one that I love is Rework.
Oh, I love that book.
You know that book, right? So this is just about, you see that big bally thing? Come on, figure it out. Yeah. This to me, I love because it really talks about, like, even when you think you know a thing, you can turn it on its head. And as a manager, again, there's if you're looking at Harvard Business Review, Stanford Social Innovation, if you are reading any kind of management books or magazines or whatever, the academic tomes, as you were. You're going to lean right to what you should or shouldn't be doing, but it's really just like the compiled opinions of experts with sometimes some data thrown in. This one allows you to explore the concept of, even when you have all the information you think you have, how do you turn it on its head and then kick it out so that it works in your environment. Okay, last one. This is a book that I use.
Oh, I love that book.
Oh my God, I love this team. I have gone through their trainings as a team member, as a manager, and as a professional of color. So they have two trainings for that when you're managing change for diversity. So I love them. I've gone through all their stuff, and I use it quite heavily with my clients because I was able to use it as a practitioner. Sorry, I'm holding it up, you guys. I was able to use it as a practitioner and a manager on my team to be able to help me understand how to reframe, how to manage day to day. Like, what is actually the routinization of management? So if you all think, if I have a bunch of fundraisers or even my communications teams on the line and listening in, if you think about when you have a marketing plan out for the whole year, or you have a communications plan out for the whole year, fundraising plan out for the whole year, this, for whatever reason, allowed me to look at operations just like I would a fundraising plan, but for my team. So how do you set up systems that are simple enough that they can be replicated and memorized and implemented, but detailed enough that they can be referenced, so that you don't do things like only think about the last 6 weeks of your team member's performance when it's time to do a review. Hello.
Right.
We've all been on the receiving end and the doing end of that. Okay. And how are you able to do an honest look back? How do you take a slice when you're in a project that you intentionally put in there so that you have opportunities to really check back in with your teammate, check back in with your manager, and still feel ownership of what you're doing? So those three books for me right now, my go-tos. I don't have new ones yet, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm sure there's tons of stuff, but like, I'm an old lady. And so my classics are my classics. And if there's I'm happy to.
Yeah. The Management Center and Managing to Change the World are such great resources. I've recommended those to a lot of people. Yeah. Have you read Marcus Buckingham's book, Now Go Use Your Strengths, which is also like another Strengths Finders one, right?
Yeah, so I started actually, let me see, I don't know if I can pull it fast in my office. I started out actually, there was a professor out of North Carolina who I went to, it was when I lived in North Carolina, I was in AFP Charlotte. We had our fundraising day, and there was one presenter who didn't do anything fundraising. He had this concept called Freakonomics, and it was about using your strengths. And so it talked about being able to use the thing that you got made fun of as a kid or whatever. So I started with him. Then I went on to Marcus Buckingham. Then I did the 30-day challenge, had the audio books. I said, I'm a nerd, y'all. And it just kind of led me down the road. And I just loved it. Like, the concepts made sense to me. And I saw that I was able to, more than DISC, more than any of the other personality tests, I was able to implement them at work.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think this question kind of piggybacks nicely off of what you and I were just talking about. Mandy wants to know, she said her boss wants her to build her management skills this year, but there's not currently any opportunities for her to manage anyone in her position. Do you have any trainings or other resources you'd recommend?
Actually, she has an opportunity every day by managing up.
That's a good point.
Managing by influence and by inference with her teammates, managing laterally. So unless you are working all by yourself and there's not a soul in sight, you will always have an opportunity to manage people. And so one of the best ways that you can learn to be a humble manager who's really plugged into your team when it's time for you to have a team is to really learn how to manage up, to know how much information is enough information, at what clips should you share things, how do you get your manager enrolled, but not micromanaging, that kind of give and take, being able to do that to your leader, what keeps them up at night, and how do you help make sure those things don't? Really understanding how that works, because what's on the paper is not necessarily what's keeping your CEO, your manager, your director up at night. That's a really good way to start to practice that muscle of managing people. Same thing with your peers. Most of us are not working in completely siloed teams. And if you are, I feel real bad. Let's talk about that. Okay. But if you're working on a cross-functional team, there's lots of opportunity for who has decision-making rights, who has veto rights, how are you able to make decisions, to build consensus, to move projects forward when you are not somebody's manager, but pieces of their work you are heavily reliant on pieces of their work. And so I think that there's opportunity for her there. And the books that I shared, actually, I think will be a really big help.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And I would just add too, I know you shared the Management Center book and training, but those are also great resources if you're looking for more like tactical training on managing. But you're right. Like, you should take the opportunities where you are now to practice those management skills. I feel like for me earlier on in my career, one of the ways that I really gained a lot of valuable management experience was being on a nonprofit board as a volunteer, which was so useful for so many reasons. I talk about it all the time as being like one of the best professional development opportunities I've ever had.
True.
But it was really so useful for me to work with a group of peers in a volunteer leadership capacity, to exercise leadership, to practice leadership, to do all those things that I wanted to do in my job, and to just have an opportunity to practice those a little bit more. So totally.
I agree with that 150%.
Yes. In case you're not busy enough already, volunteer on a board. Okay. All right. Shakitha asked, what are some tips you would give to someone who has a strong interest in becoming a nonprofit consultant or coach? Oh, this is a different question.
Oh, Lord. Run! No, I'm kidding. So a couple of things. I'm still learning. And so I have had my practice part-time for many, many years. I was a full-time practitioner until last March. And then full-time for the last year and a half. So I'm still learning, you guys. So Vanessa, you actually have way more experience than me in this one. So some of the things I would say is what I have learned is I have a very, very wide network, but my network was wide and shallow, and it was not deep. And so there are lots of people who I know, and there are lots of people who know me, but everybody kind of thought of me as a fundraiser. It wasn't until I started having what I call creative coffees. So I spend time each month with about 6 to 10 professionals who we may or may not be clients. They may or may not work together, but that we're all in the same space. I come with 3 or 4 questions that I want to talk through. And we actually literally have coffee in my office virtually, or in person if they're in New York where I live. And we just talk. Why? Because folks want to talk. Like, I know we're all busy, but we need connection. Okay. Let's not pretend. So my advice to you is to build that network so that people have a good understanding who you are, right? The same advice I would give to you in building your team. And also, what are some of the things that you're capable of? Because you'd want folks to say, oh my God, you should talk to Kashana. What does she do? She helps lots of organizations. She's amazing. Pick up the phone and call her. Even if they can't articulate the 37 things that you can do, they have a good sense in your mind. Like, you are top of mind. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing for me that I would say is decide what you're good at. I'm a generalist, and so I would die a slow death if I was like just a fundraising coach, or if I was just a major gift trainer, or just a board governance trainer. Because I spent my whole career as a generalist, and my hands in so many different things, I actually have a really good skill set in generalist behavior. And so my job is to hone each of those things. And so there's some things that I will always hand off, like, don't ask me to storytell anything. I'm forwarding to Vanessa. Hey, bye. Like, I'm not doing that. But to know like what you actually are awesome at, and or what you really find joy in, because the grind of being a consultant is very different than going to work every day for another organization. It's real in these streets.
Oh, yes, for sure.
You think that's fair, Vanessa? Like, is that a good response?
Yeah, I like that. I'm trying to think of other things that I would add to that. Yeah, I've been self-employed as a consultant now. I just passed like 4 years in April, which it seems like a lifetime, which should tell you something. It's a long time. But I think there's been a lot of challenges for me in getting started and building my practice. I've written about a lot of them on my blog. If you're interested in reading like articles and essays, I've written about those. If you go to the storytellingnonprofit.com/blog, there's a tab that'll say personal stories and personal essays, and there's a bunch under there about my practice as a consultant. But I think if I had to give you some tips now, I think one of the most challenging things for me, even though I was always like very disciplined and good at getting my work done, self-management, being self-employed, is like a whole nother level of challenging because you're it. Like, the responsibility is with you, the buck stops with you. There's a lot of things that you have to get done, and it's not just about doing the consulting work that you got hired to do, right? Like, it's about all the other things that you have to do on top of that. So self-management, I feel like, is something I'm constantly grappling with and trying to improve and get a grasp on, for lack of a better word. But I think the other thing I would say is that, I like made a transition pretty quickly from being a fundraiser into a consultant. I think when I started freelancing, from the time I started freelancing while I was still employed, it was only like 9 months or so. And I think in retrospect, I would probably give myself a longer runway, but I think the thing that was working for me was that I didn't know what I didn't know. So I just like took the leap and went for it. But know that there's like going to be some kind of like transitional period that might be difficult, that, might be more challenging. And just kind of like being mentally prepared to like get through that part, I think was really helpful for me.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's it for questions, Kashana, but I want to just wrap up and give you a chance to say any final words, and also let people know how they can connect with you after today.
Totally. So, one of the things that I will say is management is iterative. It is an ongoing conversation. It is an ongoing practice. Okay. For me, it is joyful. And so, I am so, and have been so inspired and miss being on a team, because to see my teams, and I've had, external affairs teams, so they were fundraising professionals, communications professionals, and policy professionals. So I had that sort of like triple threat joy, but to see them like really rock out on their goals, like, brought me such joy. And so if you don't find that kind of joy in people and in seeing your people be successful, like, really honor that in yourself, because it's going to mean that management is going to be a lot harder for you, and you're going to have to be really disciplined about dialing in that care factor, like really caring about your people. Everybody don't have it, and it's all right. Okay, we're not judging you today. So I think that's something that's really important. I think really being committed to educating yourself as a manager and to continuing to pursue your own professional development is going to be something that's really key. Getting a mentor, I think, is really important. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your line of work, but it should be someone who is where you think you might want to be and could have some wisdom to offer, and you would have something to offer them as well. I think mentorship is a two-way street. I think those three things to me are really, really important. And so if folks want to reach out to me, you can find me on the interwebs. So you can go to fabulouslyfundraising.com. That is my website /blog. If you want to see some of the stuff I've written, I write a lot about how to be an awesome professional, how to take care of yourself, how to be inspired as a professional. I write about diversity and now this week race. Woo, child. All the things. Catch
all the important things.
All the things. I mean, I was writing it. I can delete. No, I'm gonna write it. Delete. No, I'm writing it. And if you are into social media, you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at FundDiva, FUNDDIVA, so like fundraising diva. Where you'll get to see the visual awesomeness of my professional life and personal life. And I encourage you to become a part of the Fab fundraising crew. So we have a bunch of fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kashana. And I also want to say Kashana is speaking at a really awesome online event that one of our mutual friends is hosting later in September. Called the Nonprofit Leadership Summit. So there's a link, a green button just below the screen that you can click to learn more about that if you're interested in more training around management, leadership in the nonprofit sector. You're speaking more on management, right?
I am. I'm speaking on management there, which I'm so excited. Listen, if you guys aren't signed up right now, put your coins together, kick out just one less Starbucks a week, you guys, and you'll be able to come to the conference. It's amazing. And I'll be doing some more leadership talks for AFP in October in Cincinnati and New Jersey. And so, you find me around, you guys.
You'll be on the road.
But it's my fave. I love talking about leadership and management in our sector.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely want to encourage all of you to check out the Nonprofit Leadership Summit. Best part about it, it's online, so you don't actually have to travel anywhere. There's a lot of good things, but definitely not having to travel is always a bonus. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really encourage you to check out Kashana's work over at fabulouslyfundraising.com and on social media at FundDiva. Have a great rest of the week, everyone. Bye.
Great rest of the week, everybody.